Hello and welcome to Women on Top, the weekly podcast showcasing bright and brilliant women on a mission, brought to you by Frankie Cotton. This week, my guests are two inspiring financial feminists, Emilie Bellet and Carmel Dickinson. Emilie Bellet is founder and CEO of Vestpod, the digital platform and community that empowers women financially through education, workshops and events. Emilie is an ex-private equity analyst for Lehman Brothers and this year published her first book, You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich. Emilie is on a mission to break barriers and make finance more inclusive through Vestpod. Financial independence gives women the freedom to live their lives on their own terms and boost their confidence, which in turn helps their families and future generations. Carmel Dickinson is head of events and partnerships at Boring Money, an independent business set up to help normal people who don't have PhDs in finance make some smart investment decisions quickly and painlessly. Carmel has worked in advertising and marketing since 2005, during which time she worked for News UK to commercially run the Times and Sunday Times financial sections. Boring Money's mission is to cut through the crap, to explain stuff in normal language and to help everyone who has ever felt a bit alienated, patronised or simply cross-eyed and exhausted to make some good decisions and to get those financial monkeys off their back. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Frankie.
So Emilie, I'd love to start by hearing your story.
Of course. So I actually started my career in private equity. So I moved from Paris to London a year before the Lehman bankruptcy. So I did a few internships in finance. So I've only worked in finance. And private equity is basically you have a pot of money from institutional investors. You select companies, you manage these companies for a few years, and you sell these companies hopefully for a profit, and you return the money to your investors. So I mean, making these transactions, of course, the team makes money and stuff, but when you're very junior, you don't make a lot of money. But I was, part of Lehman Brothers. I was doing my graduate program there. So really a lot of corporate finance, really being really being in the middle of finance, but at the same time, also part of the financial crisis because I was there during the bankruptcy. So I really saw the beginning of the financial crisis, but it's the case for most of us. We started working in these years or just before or just after. So I think there's a big question around, trusting financial institutions and how we can actually overcome this. And I think we'll talk about that later. So I worked in finance for 7-8 years in private equity. And then I decided to leave to build the first tech startup in the recruitment space. So we raised some seed funding. I divided my salary by a big number, which was fine because I'm very lucky and I had some savings working for a long time in banking. But I realized over the years that it was actually quite difficult to manage your own money because we never talk about money, we never received any financial education. So where do you actually go? And my personal issue was around pension. So I had a pension working for Lehman, then didn't have a pension for years and woke up after 5-6 years of working in finance and realizing, okay, I'm not investing my own money and it's really important. So where do I start? So I decided to go and meet a financial advisor. And this guy asked me, where is your husband? So that was a few years ago, but that was really for me the starting point of Vestpod. So I hate this anecdote, but I always need to because people will remember it. So
it's difficult.
It's difficult, but it's quite a good story. And only 18% I think of advisors are female, and talking about money is extremely personal. So that was the whole story about finance. So even if you work in finance, you work in top jobs and careers, it's okay to say that you don't know anything about money and you don't know how to manage your own finances. So I started my company called Vestpod as a digital platform just to talk about money. It's a different voice in the industry. So we're just trying to make money sort of fun and relatable. And on the back of the newsletter, we've launched events and workshops. So we had over 1,200 women over the past year coming through our classes and learning everything around personal finances. So that was really the story behind Vestpod. And now we also have a book. So I wrote this book called You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich. And this is really what I've learned educating myself, talking to advisors, but also talking to women, really understanding what do they want to know about their money and how I can help them improve their financial situation.
What I find really interesting about what you just said is how money is such a taboo subject. So even if you work in the financial services sector, you might not have an understanding of what you should be doing with your money personally. And also, at what point can you ask those questions? You know, do you get to an age where you think, I'm too old, I'm too embarrassed to ask those questions, where a digital platform actually comes in really useful?
Yeah, at least it's maybe the first place, and I think it's all about learning, because before you can talk about something, you need to have the vocabulary, you need to know what you're talking about to feel a little bit more confident. So if you've never talked about money, it's going to be really hard to have this first conversation. And then it's very different. It's a very different thing from managing, budgets for work or like negotiating deals at work to actually negotiating your own money and your own salary and your own rate, because very often we associate our self-worth with the money we earn. So I think it's also understanding this thing about money mindset and really trying to understand who you are with money.
Absolutely. Carmel, could you introduce us to Boring Money and what you guys do as an organisation to democratise financial education?
Yeah, and that is boring, as in yawn, boring money. I go to a lot of meetings and receptionists always question it. They were like, boring money? Boring as in boring holes? No, boring, because money is fundamentally quite a boring thing to tackle, and we appreciate that. Similar to Emilie, we, my founder Holly Mackay writes most of the content with another great guy, Jamie, and their ethos is to kind of make it fun and engaging and relatable. We have on the site what we call our tribes, which are people that are, you can be a distressed divorcee, you can be a tired parent, you can be, and these are all on the site, ladies losing out, so women 40 plus that have not maybe engaged with their finances because of children and careers have not been what they should have been, grey gliders, people gliding into retirement. So it's all about lifestyle, because the ethos was, Holly has been in the industry for a really long time, so a very similar story to Emilie, and she was sort of saying the industry is not approaching financial content and financial products in a way that suits actually the end consumer. It is very much product focused. So she wanted to kind of change that and talk to people. No one wakes up one day and says, I want an ISA. They wake up and say, I need an ISA because I want to retire. I need an ISA because I want to save for a house, or my children, I want to send them to a good school in 18 years. So I'm going to look at a junior ISA. So that's kind of how we kind of approach it and tackle it. So we're not just for women, we're for everyone. But the way we make money as a business is not from the people coming to our site. We're not a kind of media owner. That is my background. I was at the Times and Sunday Times and sort of different financial press over the years. The way we make money is everything we kind of learn from the consumers, all their kind of bugbears, all the things that they get stuck with. We teach that back to the industry, because it's pointless for us to have a lovely site with great engaging content, lovely video, Holly really explaining things really easily, and then they go to a site, and I won't name any names because they're all just as good and as bad as each other, but then they get thrown all this jargon. They have a really difficult journey. It's not as easy as internet banking or shopping on John Lewis, and they find it really difficult, and they kind of go, oh, but Boring Money said this would be quite easy, and I'm trying to do this, but now it's really difficult. And it is difficult, and that is something that the industry have done. So we work with the industry to make it better for the people out there. So when they leave our site and they go to a digital wealth platform or a bank platform or to start investing, they kind of have a better experience and kind of understand it a bit deeper, and they can go all the way. Because I think a lot of the problem is people say, right, today I'm going to do it, and then there's a blocker, and it's not their fault. It's because of a bad website or because there's loads of language. So we're just trying to make that easier so that more and more people can kind of just get started, really, because that's all it takes, is to just get started and just kind of educate yourself a little bit.
Talk to me about financial feminism. So this is a big topic, but I think it's important, to address some of the statistics that we see, particularly in the UK, but also, globally too. When we look at the gender pay gap, for example, women on average earn 18% less than men. The pension gap is really worrying. women, again, on average, have a third of the pension size of men. And considering that women live longer, they actually need a larger pot. So you're both in this space. I guess, what can we all start doing as individuals to start to address these statistics? What do we have in our power to start tackling these things?
I think as individuals, what I will say is if you are someone who is sitting at home and listening to this and thinking to yourself, I don't invest and I haven't even started from my pension, or I've just got a workplace pension and probably need to do more. Don't beat yourself up. The one thing, part of my financial feminism is around the industry has been stacked against you. Things have been stacked against you, and the gender pay gap is stacked against you if you're a woman. And that's not going to change for a really long time, probably, because institutions have to change quite a lot to kind of, bridge that gap. And for someone that's worked in advertising and marketing for so long, a lot of these financial institutions have just been sending out a message, especially about retirement, that's just been based on you leave school, you go to work, you get a pension, you work for 40, 50 years, you retire, and then your pension pays for you until you die. It doesn't talk, there's very little comms around if you go off on maternity leave, then you're not putting in your pension. Women live longer. There hasn't been advertising and comms specifically targeted to women's lifestyles that have been separate. So don't beat yourself up at home if you are, but as an individual, it's just get yourself educated. It's like anything in life. I think you owe it to yourself to get a good financial practice and just get started with whatever way that you can. And if you become, especially for women, I think women are great at supporting each other, and there is money just still seems to be the last taboo, even with friendship groups. But there's no reason why you can't. And I'm that person in your friendship groups. Just when you start on your journey, just say, I've done this. Or, if you book to go to a Vestpod workshop, take a friend with you. And if they say, oh, but I'm rubbish with money, it's like, well, let's not be rubbish with money anymore. Come with me. And just start having conversations with your friends about what you're doing. But you can't have a feminist conversation without money being involved. There's no feminist conversation down to the Me Too movement that was about money and power. That was about men abusing their money and power and women in their careers. It's there, it's underlying in that issue. So it's really important we start talking about it.
Yeah, I think that sort of really triggers a reaction, doesn't it? That you have to talk about money if you're having a feminist conversation. I think often that's really overlooked, which is why I love speaking with both of you and hearing about your projects. And once one person starts talking, it then grows. That's what I see with Vestpod, and I think is amazing, how quickly seeing that community grow and the effect that's starting to sort of ripple out.
Yeah. I think, I second what you say, Carmel. I think for me, financial feminism, it's a very difficult term, and it's been quite difficult for me to understand, because also the definition of feminism is evolving every day, and now it's becoming super complex to say that you're a feminist. I think a few years ago it was easy to just say, yeah, I'm a feminist and stuff, but now you have to prove by your actions that you actually supporting women and helping women get equal to men. So it's actually, we need men also to be part of the conversation. But I think financial feminism for me is having men and women the same access to money management. So if you think about it, women are involved in household decisions. We take, 75% of the discretionary spending decisions. We are getting richer. We are becoming the main breadwinner. But at the same time, men still take the final decisions. So if you're in a household, women will tend to manage the household finances, but then men would invest the money, or they would take the decision for the mortgage. So I think for us as women, it's very important that slowly we start getting more involved into all these big decisions, and not only the small money management decisions, because men and women invest in a different way. We have different financial goals. Women, we are very productive about our families, our environment. We reinvest a lot in our communities. And men tend to look more for financial returns. They look for financial products. So I think you need to be comfortable also in your family on the way, money is being managed. I think women are becoming more financially independent because they have to. A lot of women maybe won't get married or, are living on their own, or they get divorced. So they have to know how to manage their own money. But as soon as women get with a partner and they start building a family, and, I had kids, so I stopped working for a few years. And then my husband was managing the finances. He was making the investment. And I realized, okay, I need to have my own money on the side because you never know what's going to happen. We don't invest the same way. So it's super important that women keep this independence, even if they start, building a family and stuff like that.
And I think that is just a small part of, I think women, there was a campaign by a bank around where they kind of tackled the media and the way that they kind of talk about women as splurgers and shoppers and this. And I think that's something that we all need to address. I'm going on a hen do this weekend, and, hen dos can be very expensive, and it's going to be a great hen do, and they've kind of done whatever they can to keep it at a budget. But it's, if you're going out with friends and you're planning occasions, think about who is probably the lowest wage earner in that group, and you should work to that budget, not the highest. And what are you doing within your family and friend group that's encouraging spending? And are you aware of whether your family group can afford that? Especially women, we are encouraged. The beauty and fashion industry is built around us spending money and, buying everything under the sun to make us look accordingly beautiful. So are we having those conversations with each other? I think there's a lot. I think what I really love about Instagram is that there's people like Emilie and you and me on there talking about, different things, and we need to encourage a conversation that's less about how we look and what we own, and more about our achievements, and more about just coming together as friends and, having dinners at home and not these amazing restaurants all the time. Although that it's great to treat yourself. I'm not saying if you work hard, you should enjoy it. But there does seem to be a leniency towards this, this consumerism, and we need to address that. And I think that, to me, is a lot around financial feminism, is around making sure that we're all having really good conversations with each other about we're just not talking about all of the clothes that we've bought or the our houses that we can afford, and et cetera, because that can put pressure on other people to feel like they need to keep up. And I think it's really important to just, as a group, to just make sure that we're understanding, can we all afford this? Are we all living in the same world? And if not, what can we do to make sure that it's more comfortable for other people? And let's talk about, and let's be more aware of, when people are saving for families or saving for houses, let's make sure that we kind of just do stuff that's on the cheaper side, so we're supporting that saving habit, or whatever lifestyle choice that one of your friends or family are making.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you're saying there around social media, because, like you said, on the one hand, when somebody's having a different conversation, it can be a really powerful place to find out new things and to start to think differently. But equally, on the flip side, there is this peddling of consumerism that you're talking about. And what that means is we can start to feel quite competitive with each other, and even with our friends. And then that starts to dismantle potential conversations around, well, actually, can we all afford this crazy hen do with all of these things that we're buying? And if we're all putting it on a credit card, then that's not the point. Getting together as a group of friends and really enjoying and celebrating somebody doesn't have to mean putting yourself in debt.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but it's an interesting sort of, I guess, crossroads that we're perhaps at the moment.
But for me, actually, I found it really hard to have these money conversations amongst friends. I worked in finance, then didn't work in finance, and telling your friends, like, I can't afford it, I can't come to this party, or like if a friend of yours, like, you see, doesn't have enough money, it makes everyone, I think, in a really like tricky position. So I think it's really hard to have this first conversation, and that's also why I set up Vestpod. It was just to get women in the room who don't necessarily know each other, and they know when they come to Vestpod they can talk about money. They're not going to judge, because we also don't know each other, and then these are like your sort of money friends, and it's not about getting richer or having like more money just for the sake of having money, but it's having like really positive conversation about money. But I know sometimes for me it's really hard, like having money conversation with a partner. I think with times it gets easier. With your parents, it's for me, it's almost impossible. And with friends, it's really, really hard. And I mean, we live in London. There's like massive differences in terms of income. So what are your bankers' friends doing with, your other friends? I find it really difficult.
I'd love to talk with you both about money mindset, because it feels like this is the conscious layer of starting to unpick all of these things, whether it's what we've sort of learnt from our parents, the messages that we get fed from society, all of those things culminate in essentially what becomes our money mindset. And that's the opening chapter of your book, Emilie, You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich, which is fabulous. Can I just say?
Thank you.
Yeah, it's what's wonderful about the book is that it's just a really practical handbook, which starts with money mindset and then takes you through sort of all the important milestones to ultimately financial freedom. So I think it's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, let's talk about money mindset and how you can take control or empower yourself around how you think about money.
Yeah, so that's the book is like super practical, and that's everything I've learned about managing my own finances, about my journey. But actually, after doing my budgets and everything, I've realized, okay, there's something else that I need to capture, and it's actually my money story, my money personality, because we've been somehow managing money or see people managing money around us forever, like our parents or maybe people who are taking care of us, and all these feelings and thoughts we have around money, and they can be conscious or actually subconscious, we develop like a money mindset. So it's who we are with money. So in the book, I try to show you different money personalities. So some people think it's being greedy to want to have more money. Some people feel shame around the topic of money. Some people didn't have money when they were growing up. So now when they have money, they want to make sure they spend it quickly so then money doesn't somehow disappear. Or other will, spend a lot of money on their credit card. So actually the way you see money will define a lot of your behavior with money today. And saving money, how to build wealth is quite simple in the end. In theory, is earning money, then you spend money, and at the end, if you have some money left, you should be able to save some money and potentially invest some money for the future. And that's how you buy some assets and you build wealth, and hopefully these assets will then generate more money. So of course, the more money you have, the more money you will eventually get. But I think the starting point is getting in the habits of saving money. But if you've been a spender or like to spend money all your life, it's really difficult to shift your mindset. So I wanted this book to be very practical, because I think there's a lot of super small things you can do in terms of starting to save money, and that will have an impact on actually your money mindset.
I think good money mindset is focusing on the money. And not being scared of it. You hear stories of people that don't even open their bank accounts month to month or even 6 months to 6 months. And it's such a big part of everybody's life. And so you just have to embrace it I sort of say good money mindset is like a practice. It's like having a yoga practice or a health and fitness practice, or, how did you succeed in achieving something? Yeah, if you can kind of look at those habits and look at where you mentally were when you did that achievement, then just attribute that to your finances, and it is a habit. So how are you with habits? Do you need to have someone? Do you need a buddy system? Do you need to do it with someone, or do you need to do all the research in the world? Are you like a researcher, or what makes you tick? We had a behavioural psychologist at a Boring Money event, and he talked about that the problem with saving and investing is that it's just not, it doesn't give you a bit of a hit. You're kind of watching it grow very, very slowly. And then if you're investing, sometimes you see it go down, and that's really scary. And he was sort of saying, when you buy something off Amazon, like Emilie's book, for instance, and it comes in and you open up that packaging and there's that beautiful yellow book, it's like a little dopamine hit, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to read this book and I'm going to get really good with money. You don't get that dopamine hit, unfortunately, from saving. So it's trying to find that emotional trigger that makes you feel good about it. for me, from someone that had a lot of debt in the past, my money mindset is based on stability and safety. And that's the thing that makes me kind of just keep on top of it. And also I work in the industry, so I kind of want to be able to say, yeah, I'm all right at it and I can have conversations with people. But what is it? What is that? What do you need to get you in that mindset, I think? And that's different for everyone. There's different motivators, there's different, but if it's, whether it's your mental health or whether it's the lifestyle choice that you're trying to get to, that's where your mindset will come from, I think. And just keep yourself motivated, because it's hard and it's a long journey. A lot of people use the analogy and liken it to fitness, and I think that's a good one, because that they're similar things. It's something that you've got to do for life, and you've got to have a practice, and it has to be regular, and you have to not be afraid of it, as intimidating as it can be. We get letters from people saying thank you so much, you really helped. But you must see it at
on Instagram. I get messages every day, like girls telling me, I negotiated my salary. I don't think I would have ever been able to do it without coming to like a Vestpod event. So I think it's fantastic, and it really helps people like feeling better also about themselves and then achieve like other goals. I think what's really important is also the way you talk to yourself about money, and that's why the title of the book is You're Not Broke, You're Pre-Rich, because when I started Vestpod, like everyone came to my workshop and they were like, oh, I'm so bad with money. I'm so broke. I can't save. And I think just making this very simple switch, and that's something, you can read this book called The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it's very important. It's just even like changing the way you talk. So just don't say I'm broke, but like maybe I'm pre-rich, or don't say I can't save, but maybe I can save £5 a month. And these are very easy changes. So as soon as you notice you speak to yourself in a negative way, just try to change it into a positive. And by making these affirmations, it will help you get better with money. So I know if you're really struggling with money, you're going to think this is a bit bullshit, but actually I think it really, really helps just being quite positive about money. You talked about the fear of money, and same, like when people come to the workshops, and that's an experience I had with my financial advisor when I met him for the first time. So we sat down in this room and he asked me, okay, can we go over your own finances? And then he started asking me how much money you have in your saving account, how much money you have on your current account, how much money you have in your pension, how much money you have invested, how much debt do you have. And he started writing all these numbers in front of me, and that creates a lot of anxiety and stress. And you also don't know most of these numbers, so you have to go and look for these numbers. So as if you are prepared, if you're educated, and if you think you can earn more money, you can save more money, I think that really helps building like a new mindset around money also.
You really touch on something there when you talk about the shame related to money, because to get rid of shame, you have to shine a light on it, I suppose, and you have to bring it out into the open, which is what you're both doing in your organisations. Money is also just really, really emotional, and we have such an emotional connection, which is why, it's really easy to say that you might work in financial services, but when it comes to your own money, you have a completely different emotional reaction and a tie. So I guess is money mindset also around trying to be objective, or trying to create a bit of a distance between your self-worth, who you are as a person, and the amount of money perhaps that you make, or that you have, as you were just saying, in your bank account or in your pension?
I think still get very anxious about the fact that I'm 41 now, God, and I'm probably quite behind in my pension because I had a lot of debt and I was focused on like paying that off. But that's just the way it is. And the thing about buying houses as well, like if all of your friends are buying houses and you're not, and people starting businesses, and you're thinking, how can they start a business? How can they afford to start a business? And when people talk about their savings, and I think you have to just go in your own lane, because if you try to keep up and if you get stuck in that comparison about other people's money, you can't move forward, because you're just looking outside, and you have to kind of focus on your money, but just like you say, have that kind of thin sort of gap between you and your money, and understand that you can't suddenly, unless you're going to win the lottery, be rich. It's a process, and you have to get yourself there. And there's an account on Instagram called My Frugal Year, and she was just talking about not using terms like I am in debt and my debt, as well, if we're going to talk about that, because I think that's important. It's the debt, or the, you know, it's kind of disassociating yourself with it. I think you're right. It's hard though. I mean, I'm even finding it hard to articulate the difference between getting into understanding your money, but understanding that it's not you are not the money, you are not the worth, but you have to also understand what your worth is in relation to your life and what you want out of your life. So it's a very fine line, but
I love that account, My Frugal Year.
It's brilliant.
It's just so eye-opening and so refreshing. You know, to kind of get that honesty about a particular person's experience with debt.
Yeah, I think for me, just on the money and emotions, for me the only way to strip all the emotions out of the process of managing money is to get extremely practical. So for me, it's have all my number. It can be on a piece of paper. You can use an app, but make sure you're in control of your money. So that means you know exactly how much money you're getting every month. You know where this money is going. So that's the process of making a budget or making a spending plan. You can call it. I mean, there's hundreds of ways of doing it, but understanding where your money is going, and you don't need to count like every pound in your account, but know more or less where your money is going, know how much you have left at the end of the month, know how much you should save for retirement, and you can go online and there's a lot of retirement calculators. But I think once you own all these numbers, then you don't really feel stress, or you don't have, you know, emotions around money, because you know where you stand today, you know where you can be in a few years, you know you have hopefully a little part of savings on the side, and you're like saving for all these different things, or you're on a journey to repaying your debt, and you know that in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, you're going to be debt free, and that's going to be amazing. But at least you need to have maybe these goals and have your finances organized. And then, I mean, I'd never think about, you know, my money mindset, like, you know, I grew up like this or that, or, you know, this is the way I spend money, because I know that, you know, I'm in control of what I have, and I'm not making a lot of money with Vestpod. But then I'm not, you know, spending a lot of money, and I feel comfortable with that. And I stopped comparing myself also with other people. And a lot of my friends are still actually working in banking. But you see that people who earn a lot of money, they always want to earn more money. So I think no one is really happy with where they are. So of course for them, you know, they're super privileged. So we have like different issues, but they also always want more money. So I think being in control and being happy with what you have is super important. And I think another thing is around mindfulness. So I do a lot of meditation, and I find it really beneficial actually in terms of money management, and trying to be happy with what you have, and working on, you know, maybe having more, or having like more money to be able to realize your goals, or spend money on experiences and things that you like. So I think mindfulness is also really helpful in relation with money, and stripping out all the emotions on the money like conversation.
Arguably, one of the most common misconceptions around money is that if you make more money, you'll have more money, or that your future looks better and brighter. But that's, you know, as you're just saying, that's not necessarily the case. It's actually about how you manage it, what you spend. You know, so you could earn, say, 150k a year. You could earn that amount of money, but if you don't budget, you could still be in debt. You could still have no savings, no investments. And when you retire, or if something happened to you that meant you were out of work, you would be in a very dire financial situation. So it's not just about the front end and loading that, but it's actually about the decisions that you then make from there. And, you know, from what you were saying, Emilie, it's you have to not bury your head in the sand. There almost comes like a catalyst moment where you go, okay, no. And it's probably the hardest step is actually confronting all of the numbers and the reality, which is probably really painful for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, and I've done it with financial advisors. It is extremely painful, but I think by reading books, going online, there's so many things you can do on your own. So no one is judging you. You don't have to share these numbers with anyone. In the book, I've tried to put some like exercise tables where you can actually go and write your numbers. You don't need to write them in the book. You can write them, you know, on your phone somewhere. You don't need to show these numbers to anyone. So that's going to be a really difficult exercise, but I think it's going to be a massive progress for you in terms of taking care of your own finances.
Just some like little stats around that. I think it's about 72% of people in the country that earn up to 150k are living paycheck to paycheck. So they're literally spending all of their money every month and not really, they might be sort of putting into a workplace pension. There's kind of some around that, but they're literally running out of money at the end of the month. And that's people earning up to 150k. And then there's also, I mean, I hate using this because in a way, if you're earning 25k or 30k, you might think, well, of course. But apparently 75k is the number that most people that are on that salary or have that joint income in their house are at their happiest. And actually being a millionaire and 100, after that, you're just chasing the money. Or, you know, you've got all of the other problems that, I mean, God knows what the problems are with having millions, but, you know, there must be. And that's difficult if you're listening to this and you earn 25k a year. But I think what it highlights is that, like exactly what you said, having all of the money in the world does not make you happier. There's so much more. And some of your happiest moments in your life are probably not when you're standing at a till spending £200. You don't look back and remember that day that you bought that laptop. That's not the moments in your life. It's when you're standing in a field dancing with your friends at a free festival, or, you know, when you're holding your children. That kind of stuff, I think it's always good to kind of just remember that when you're having that painful moment with money and you're like, God, it feels like miles away to my deposit for my house, or look at my debt, that's really scary. It's like, yeah, but that's where we are right now, but you've got this and you've got that.
Yeah, that sort of really highlights what's important.
Yeah.
One of the mistakes that I made, certainly when I thought I was being smart with money and I wasn't, was kind of collecting cash, for want of a better term.
Yeah.
But I was cash hoarding. So I had a savings account, which was very low rate, and actually I was losing money by hoarding cash instead of investing it. And I think often actually that's another piece of the puzzle for people, is that they think, okay, well, I'll just put some money away for savings. And that's great if you have short-term or short to mid-term needs. But equally, you know, in order to prepare for the future, investing is key, because ultimately there is, you know, the rate of inflation and you need to be thinking about that. For a lot of millennials, they experience a financial crash. There's a distrust in the financial markets. What would you recommend for people who are thinking, okay, yes, I know I need to invest. Where do I go, or how do I start? And when I say I hoarded cash, it wasn't a lot. I'm not talking like,
No.
You know, but do you know what I mean? Like that was my financial strategy, was if I take a portion of my paycheck and put it in a savings account, that always solved my problems, and it didn't.
Yeah. You know, we hear from people that have millions of pounds in cash and they think investing's not for them. I think our last piece of research, it said that people thought that they needed to start with £4,000. You don't. You can start with £50. So there's a talk about money mindset. There's a mentality around investing, and trust is one of those big ones. I'm really glad that you've brought it up. And look, I know crashes have happened, but they don't happen that often, and it is a regulated business, and there are people out there who the industry probably hate that are trying to look after your rights, and you do have rights. So you just kind of have to put your best foot forward and just get started.
Yeah, and I think regarding the financial system, I mean, as you say, it's extremely regulated, but you actually need the financial system to make your money grow. So if you leave your money under your mattress for years, your money is not going to grow, but the economy is growing, companies are growing, so there's inflation. The inflation is about 2% at the moment in the UK, and if you all go and check how much money you're getting on your savings, you're getting about 1%. So in 1 year time, you won't be able to buy the same things that you can actually buy today. So that's why for your short-term goals, medium-term goals, you can and you should keep some money in cash, because you never know what's going to happen. You don't want to end up in debt and start taking money from your credit card. But when we talk about the long-term, it's actually important to invest these savings. So these are not available because you will need to sell your investments, and you never know, there may be another financial crisis tomorrow. But we'll see in this, there's been a lot of drawdowns in the market, and maybe every 10 years, people say every 10 years the market goes down, but now the market has recovered from the financial crisis. It's been quite a good year actually. So if you start investing very small amount regularly in the stock market, sometimes you will invest at the top of the market, sometimes you'll invest at the bottom, but over time, hopefully, your returns should average out. But I think because of interest compounding and because your money is going to be making money, and the interest you're getting from the financial market is going to be higher than inflation, your money will actually grow faster. But actually, if you have a workplace pension, you are already an investor, so maybe that's a good place to start. The money that you're saving every month and that your employer is contributing to is put into a workplace pension. And if you go and check your workplace pension, it's actually invested in the financial market. So it's a good idea to go and check in what type of funds is this money invested, how much fees are you paying, who's your pension advisor, maybe you can check with your HR, and that's a good place to start. And then there's a lot of robo-advisors on the market, and with these guys you can start investing even your spare change. So there's an app called Moneybox that rounds up all your savings and that invest it in the stock market. And I think for me, with women, very often it's a problem of confidence because they feel they don't understand everything. But I tell them, if you get started with £5 a month, and if you can afford to lose this money, and hopefully £5 a month you can, just get started, because I think having some skin in the game and getting started investing, that's maybe the motivation you need to make more money or manage your money, because you will see how your money is growing. You will feel you are part of the economy. So I think getting started even on a super small scale and then try to understand it by doing it is actually super helpful for women.
Just having skin in the game, as you said, is important, because you can't avoid the financial markets and the system that's there. We all need to be educated in how we can use it to our advantage, but you can't just abstain and just say, no, I don't believe in it, I'm not taking part in it, because ultimately the only person that's going to lose out in that situation is you and your family.
Yeah, 100%.
I could talk to you guys all day about financial feminism and about money, but what I'd love to kind of end on really is some practical advice for our listeners around negotiation. So how can they improve their income, whether it's at work, or maybe if they're negotiating a consulting fee or a freelance fee? What are your top tips for negotiating?
Number one, we all do it every day. I watch people negotiate with their kids around their food. I watch people negotiate with their partners about what to watch on telly that night. I watch people negotiate with their friends about where to go on a hen do. You are negotiating constantly. You're negotiating with yourself in your decision making. So it's actually something that you do a lot. So that so think about it like that. It's less scary. Number two, it's a process. It's not just when you get in that room and you're doing that pitch or you're asking for that money. It's a long process. It's kind of doing your research, thinking about what number that you want to get to for you. Understanding who you are dealing with, your manager, what objections might that manager have about budgets, about they need to hire more people or they've just got cuts themselves, or if it's a business, what value are you bringing to that business? Why do they pick you over someone else? What's unique about you that you can bring to that business, and also what can that business bring to you in your career? Understand all of that and do that. Never go in a room without knowing what you're doing and who you're talking to is like my biggest tip. I think a lot of people fall down there. And also just know what your bottom line is and be willing to walk away if you're not getting that bottom line. So there's always this kind of thing, if you want a £2,000 pay rise, then go in and ask for 5 because you'll possibly get 2. That is a rule of thumb. Like in sales, whenever we put proposals together, we usually put 3 options together. Most people go for the middle option. Mm-hmm. It's like a wine list, right? So kind of build that up and know what you want to go in there. And if you're in that negotiation and you're feeling grubby, it's feeling uncomfortable, you're not feeling like you're getting something out of it that you want to, stop, take a breath, end the conversation, or say thank you very much, I'm just going to go away and process this. That you're so entitled to do that, and that's a really, really important part of negotiation. People lose negotiations because they just keep going and they end up somewhere that they didn't want to be. So just stop and say thank you very much for the offer, I'm going to go away, I'm going to think about it. Or you finish your pitch and they might offer you something and it doesn't fit with you. If it doesn't, listen to your gut, don't do it. Other opportunities, you might then decide to leave the company, then there might be another job come up within your company, you might not win that business, but another piece of business comes along and thank God you didn't take that business because you wouldn't be able to do the other one. There's always opportunity around the corner if you're working for it. So just say, that's it, that's my bottom line, I'm going to walk away. And people will respect you for that as well, I think. I think people always come back to people that have the ability to do that. So
I think that's an often overlooked, not play, that's not the right word I'm looking for, but you can just say, okay, I'll think, thanks for your offer. I need to think about it.
Yeah.
And that's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. It doesn't have to end yes or no, or your way or somebody else's way. It doesn't have to end that way. You have the control to say, okay, I need to think about it. That's really important.
Yeah.
Emilie, what do you see from your side, and particularly for women around negotiation?
Yeah, so I see we ran a really big event actually last week, and Carmel was one of the speakers. So we had this like long conversation. You can watch the recording on YouTube. But I think for me is about not waiting. So I think while I was working in corporate, I was always waiting for someone to come and tell me, yeah, well done, we give you a salary increase. This is not going to happen. So you have to be proactive, and you have to get into this habit of negotiating more often, because also as women we are seen a bit like greedy and bossy, and there's been this big research in the US by Sheryl Sandberg a few years ago that women are seen as bossy. But if we actually go more often and ask for more money more often, I think it will become like a norm for everyone that women actually do go and ask for salary increases, and they get it, because we definitely need more money. So we talked about gratitude a lot and being happy with what you have, but if you want to achieve your financial goals, if you want to retire with money, you actually need to ask for more. There's still this gender pay gap of 18%. So everybody is trying to close this gender pay gap, but I think it's also our own responsibility as women, for us and for the next generation, that we go and negotiate our own salary if we think it's fair. And I think it's a positive conversation. So you don't need to pretend to be someone else. You don't need to, dress up and pretend. You can really be authentic. You can be yourself. You can just tell your boss, I love this company. I love this job. I want to stay here. But, this is what I should be paid, based on market value, based on everything I'm bringing to the table. And I think it should be a pretty positive conversation. So maybe you're not going to get this salary increase today, but it's a process. So maybe next month you can sit down and have another conversation and keep really positive about it. If you think it's not happening, maybe it's not the right company for you. And there's tons of other companies that would be, super willing to take you on board, I believe.
Yeah, there's definitely a collective responsibility for all of us, for governments, for businesses to tackle the gender pay gap, but also, not forgetting that there is an individual element, and we can do our best and we can try. There is an element of power that we can have as individuals to try and improve our personal financial situation.
And I think, it really starts with yourself, like any movement. You have to be comfortable with where you are. You have to have enough money to be able to then create change. And then can you take people around you? Is there some, young women in your companies? Because we talk a lot about, having more women on board and stuff, but I think it should start from the bottom, actually. So can you help women around you to have this money conversation, open up with them, help them understand, are they happy in their job? Are they earning enough? Are they okay? Do they have enough money to live in London? And I think that will, level up the whole thing. So it really have to start from, employees helping themselves also.
Thank you both so much for all of the insights that you shared. Just to wrap up, where can we follow you, get more information and absorb more of this money conversation?
So you can see all the wonderful work of the team of Boring Money at boringmoney.co.uk.
You can find me on Vestpod.com. The first thing you can do is sign up to our weekly newsletter, because we send a lot of information in the newsletter about events, content. And once you're on Vestpod.com, you can see our Instagram, our YouTube, our social media, and get involved. The community is super open, diverse. So come to our London events, and hopefully we'll come and see you in other places also very soon.
Yeah, and I can give a personal reference for Vestpod. Such a great community. The events are amazing and the brand is just spot on. So I can promise that you'll love it. Thanks for listening to Women on Top, the podcast. You can join in the conversation online using the hashtag #TheWhatPod and tagging us at @TheWhatPod on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find all the details about our wonderful guests in the show notes. Support for Women on Top comes from Entail, the Webby award-winning interactive podcast platform. Entail is changing the game when it comes to podcasting through its rich visual experience. Give it a go and download today from the App Store. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe on your favourite podcast app and spread the word. See you next week.